Baby boomers, get excited. This is the podcast that's for you, by you. The Boomer Business Owner is the only podcast dedicated to helping baby boomers successfully start and run an online business. If you're ready for empowering conversations with successful online entrepreneurs, then grab a coffee and listen into your host, Charlie Posnick.
Welcome to the Boomer Business Owner. My guest today is Justin Gilchrist. Justin is an honorary baby boomer and the co-founder of Centurica, an agency that provides due diligence and consulting services to online business investors. Prior to Centurica, he bought, built, and sold a variety of online and offline businesses with a focus on web applications and e-commerce. Hey, Justin, welcome to the show.
Hey, Charlie. Thank you for having me on.
I am actually so excited to have this conversation. At the Boomer Business Owner, we talk a lot about doing something you enjoy, building a revenue stream around that. More often than not, it takes the place of doing something online, or it takes place by doing something online. And the default conversation seems to be, all right, what kind of business can I start? Should I start a blog? Should I start a business selling widgets? And the traditional conversation that you and I might have if we were looking to run a dry cleaning business of, do I start a dry cleaning business from scratch or do I buy an existing one, oftentimes doesn't translate over into the online space. Most people, I don't think, know that there's an active secondary market for online businesses. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And it's something that we take for granted. We often think that everybody knows what we do and everybody understands that you can quite easily acquire an online business. But it's quite rare still. It's not common knowledge. I certainly wouldn't say it is.
Okay, so Centurica is a agency. Is it fair to call it a business brokerage? Or I know it's probably more than that, but you help people buy online businesses, buy and sell.
To some extent, I'd call us an agency. I wouldn't call us a brokerage. Okay. We work with brokerages. The brokerages are responsible for working with the seller. They represent the seller of the business and they bring those businesses on board. We effectively represent the other side of the transaction. So we work with the buyer. We make sure the buyer's getting a fair deal. And we make sure that everything the seller tells the buyer is accurate and correct.
Boy, this is getting better all the time. I like this a lot. Now, you, I don't want to get off track here, but you have another business as well, FlipFilter?
I do. So FlipFilter is more of, it's funny, in this day and age, you can actually call a business a hobby, and that's okay. FlipFilter is a hobby business. It's something I started because I have a passion in this niche. I have a passion for data and figures, and I'm really interested with what's going on with the numbers side of people acquiring. Well, FlipFilter is more websites rather than complete businesses. And if we have a bit of time later on, I'll make that kind of important distinction. But the idea behind FlipFilter was it was just a tool, originally to help myself just kind of understand what was going on in the market and how things were trending. But then it eventually became a sort of profitable business in itself. But it is my baby more than anything else. It's not what I spend the majority of my time on.
Well, please do take a moment to make that distinction between a website and a business.
It's really important that people understand this. And this is where sometimes people will come across a website and have unrealistic expectations and kind of expect to be able to buy a business and then ultimately wonder where things have gone wrong. In my mind, a website is ultimately something that may or may not be making profit, but doesn't have a lot of the systems and doesn't have a lot of the reliability and scalability that an online business would have. So, for example, I wouldn't call anything that's been established for less than, I'd say 18 months, possibly longer, a business. I'd call that a website, possibly a website that makes money, possibly a website that you can turn into a business. But it's not a clear-cut line, but that's one of the many things. Another one would be how scalable that particular opportunity is. If you've got something that is only receiving organic traffic and you have limited options to grow that, then I would call that more of a website at that stage rather than a business where you'd have multiple options to scale. You'd have maybe multiple streams of income. Maybe this would have existing systems and you've just got that guarantee or more of a guarantee that this is going to go on to deliver something of value for you.
It's interesting because prior to this conversation or, maybe a couple of years ago, my definition of buying, quote unquote, an online business would be that website example you were giving. I could remember very vividly, and I'm making up the numbers, but they're probably pretty close. XYZ website is for sale and it's earning $150 a month in profit, and the selling price is $1,700. And you sit there and you think, okay, let me do the math. In 12 months, this will pay for itself. But the fact of the matter is, the chance of that business continuing at that rate without going up or more than likely down without you doing anything is probably close to zero.
Absolutely. So I think you've just made you've helped me clarify what I failed to quite eloquently put into words. But ultimately, you're buying a system, you're buying something that would still run if you weren't there tomorrow, or at least that's the hope. When you buy a website, you're buying something that is often, propped up or supported by Google. It may run by itself to an extent, but you'll usually find more often than not that the owner has to continue to do things to maintain that traffic that's generating revenue. So, for example, with a website, it's more than likely that the website is receiving the majority of its traffic from organic search. And to keep those rankings, you're going to have to keep creating new content. You're going to have to keep maybe doing SEO. Whereas with a business, you'd more than likely have either a system to create that new content. For example, you'd outsource that, or the seller would have had that system set up where he's currently outsourcing, creating content and writing articles. And in addition to that, maybe they're using paid traffic. So that system is already in place where if you didn't turn up for 6 months, it's likely that business would continue to function. And I say that, it's not that clear cut. There's very few businesses that you can buy where if you don't turn up indefinitely as the owner, as the innovation, they'll continue to run. But it's just highly likely if you buy an established business as opposed to just buying a website that has kind of little to fall back on.
And one could make the argument that the typical uninitiated person who may be looking to buy, quote unquote, buy an online business, which in our definition here is kind of a website, they're probably not going to know what it is that has been done to have that business generating $150 a month in profit, and consequently what needs to be done to continue to have it do that or maybe even grow. So it's a double whammy there.
Absolutely. And I think another distinction, I don't want to get sort of too granular or too geeky into the details, but the one thing that a lot of people don't realize that's really important to understand is that when you purchase either a website or a web business, technically you're going through an asset sale. You're not actually purchasing a business, even if you're purchasing a website business. Does that make sense?
Why don't you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure. So how a typical transaction in this industry is structured is, say, for example, you came across a site that's being sold for 150K. And this site is, it's an established business, been around for 4 years. Maybe it's an e-commerce store, so it sells widgets to, whatever market. It has paid traffic. It has people who handle customer service. It has all the trappings of an established business. It's really important to remember that when you buy an online business, 95% of the time, you're actually completing an asset sale. So you're acquiring effectively the domain, you're acquiring the website, you're acquiring all the electronic files and all the electronic property around that. You might be taking on some stock, but you're not buying the business. So you're not buying the legal entity. The owner will effectively discard that, and you will set up a new legal entity to take this asset into. And that's something that a lot of people get confused when they first start. They think they're buying a business in the conventional sense, where you'll find the majority of agreements are actually purchase agreements for assets, which are the websites and the files and everything that goes with it, even if it is an established business.
Got it. Now, you brought up the concept of money, or you broached the subject. You just gave an example if you're buying a business for 150K. So set my expectation, Justin. I come to you and I'm a prospective customer of yours for your agency. I say, Justin, I have some cash here. I'm retired. I've been working for a long time. I have money saved up. I want to start doing something. What is on the low end for me to get a business that's a business? It has systems, it's set up, and it's earning some money. Kind of on the low end, should I expect to be paying $100,000 or $150,000? Can I buy a business for $50,000 or less? Just kind of set my general expectations there.
Sure. I mean, a lot of this is a matter of opinion. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you my perspective based on what I'm seeing at the moment. I think you should never spend less than 20K. Some people see great things for less than 20K. There's usually a reason why they're less than 20K. Ideally, your minimum would be around 50K, in my opinion. If you want something with some form of established system, you want something with a little bit of history behind it, maybe 2-3 years, and you want something that has the nuts and bolts to continue on, I'd say 50K really is your minimum. The sweet spot that I'm finding at the moment is around 80,000. And 80,000 is the point where you've got not as much competition as you have at a sort of the 30 to 50K bracket, but it's also not what I'd call a huge amount to invest in terms of buying a business, but you can still get a fairly decent site for your money at that price.
Let's make the numbers a little easier. And let's say we're talking about a purchase price of $100,000. What kind of cash is that going to be throwing off on a monthly basis, typically?
So average multiples in our niche tend to be between 2 and 3 times annual net. So on a 100K site, you're generally talking something that's throwing off around 30 to 50K a year. But what I think is also really important to remember is the more you pay, effectively, that the higher that multiple, generally, the better the business you're going to get. So I'd always advise people not to make the mistake of rushing into buying a site that's maybe at a multiple of 1.5 times, because it's usually been priced that way for a reason. You'd be far better off going for a slower payback, but knowing that what you've bought, maybe at a valuation of 4 times, gives you far more potential to expand and improve, and in some ways receive your return on investment far quicker because it's a much more stable business.
I'm going to draw a distinction here between an offline transaction, online transaction. So I'll make the argument that I want to buy a dry cleaner, I want to buy a bakery shop, something like that. You know, it's a business. I'm selling products or services, and kind of quote unquote general business principles apply. Now, if I come to you and I am buying something that's selling, widgets online, there are probably working parts that I may not understand this business is doing. You mentioned paid traffic a couple of times. I don't know what paid traffic is. It's engaging in search engine optimization. I'm not sure really what that is. It has a really robust email marketing list and program. I'm not sure I know what that is. So should that be a hindrance for me? 2 questions. Should that be a hindrance for me when I'm looking to buy an online business? And the second question is part of the service that your agency provides helping educate me or helping me understand the nuances of an online business?
To some extent, I'd always advise people to be skeptical about getting into any sort of investment opportunity that they don't really understand. And I mean, you're from the financial industry. I'm sure you'll know that there's one level of understanding that the general public have and another level of understanding that people who work in the industry have. So when I say understand, I mean just have a real sort of basic understanding of things like, right, what's the definition of paid traffic? What's the definition of search engine traffic? Or, sort of how one relates to the other, or why when someone makes a purchase, sort of how you get paid and how the mechanisms behind a typical e-commerce site works. Now, we don't provide a sort of education service as such, but we make a lot of the information available for free. So we have a lot of downloadable guides and resources on Centurica.com, through my own blog, FlipFilter, through Digitally Wed. This is the information that we're putting out, and we're helping people understand how to run and how to manage an online business. But much of this information is actually out there and it's available for free. So the one thing that I'm usually looking for before we work with someone is that they've taken the time just to go out there and do the research and just have a look at the information that's freely available on the web, just to get an understanding of what they're buying before they get into it and make that purchase. Because the worst thing you can do is sort of leave the due diligence and leave the responsibility for knowing whether that's a good purchase entirely to someone else, even if that is us. We'll do the high level technical stuff for you, and we'll tell you based on our experience whether that purchase is a good purchase to make or not. But it is ultimately down to you to understand whether that's a good opportunity for you and whether that's going to meet your objectives as an investor.
You're probably my 275th or thereabouts interview, and just about everyone else who I have interviewed on this show, when we talk about starting an online business, everyone basically says that one of the first things you should do is really do something you enjoy doing. be involved in something you enjoy. So I come to you, I'm working with you, and you say, Charlie, there's this great business. It's an e-commerce business. It sells fishing supplies. And it's a really solid business, been around for a long time. And I'm telling you, Charlie, in all these years that I've been doing this, this is one of the good purchases. Yet I don't care about fishing. Would you counsel me to look someplace else, or not look someplace else like away from you, but look at a different business other than that fishing business in this example?
I think I'm going to be devil's advocate, Charlie. I would always advise people, and this is from my own experience, I'd always advise people to stay away from chasing their interests or their hobbies. This is one of the ways I see people most quickly fail, because they end up with this really narrow focus where they are looking for a really specific site that does a really specific thing. And because it is often very difficult to find that, you've got to imagine between sort of 20,000 and 2 million, which is the sort of band we work in, there are on average at any one time around 300 active, what I'd call verified listings. That's listings through brokers that have had some degree of quality control applied to them. So, we're not talking about a huge amount of available inventory. So if you then narrow your focus down to just fishing, for example, you're either going to be waiting a very long time and missing other good opportunities, or you're going to more than likely be biased for the first fishing opportunity that comes up. And that can often cause you to miss like big obvious flaws in that. I would always advise people to treat this as a business and go with something that they can work with, go with something that they're not going to feel dreadful about doing every day, but appreciate that to some extent the product is irrelevant. You've got to fall in love with the process. You've got to fall in love with waking up and knowing that you're going to check your stats today and you're going to see the result of the last experiment you did. You've got to fall in love with knowing there's 1,000,001 different things you can do that within an instant can improve the amount of money you're making, which you just can't do with offline. So I'd say fall in love with the idea of online business and with the mechanisms of it rather than the niche. Keep your hobbies for the weekend and keep your business separate ultimately.
Quite an interesting perspective. I appreciate that. Is it fair to say that the majority of business purchases are going to be location independent? So barring, some huge business that has some huge warehouse in some specific location that can't be moved, as a generalization, if I am purchasing an online business, I can pretty much be anywhere and purchase that business. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And this is actually where an opportunity comes in to some extent. So you'll find the majority of businesses are location independent. However, you will get some e-commerce businesses where maybe the seller keeps some stock locally. We've had, relatively, I won't say big, but we've had businesses that are kind of $200,000-$300,000 businesses where the owners just kept the stock in their garage and dispatched stock directly from there. So those businesses actually offer an opportunity. And I always advise, sort of people who are not so familiar with online business to consider e-commerce first, because it's scalable, it's relatively dependable, and it's one of the easiest transitions to make from an offline mentality. So if you're familiar with offline business, you understand about buying and selling goods, you will pretty much get e-commerce with just a little bit of kind of technical knowledge to add on. But there's a huge opportunity in buying e-commerce businesses that currently aren't location independent. So ones where the owner has stock tied to a particular location, or ones where maybe suppliers only ship to certain locations, but then just looking at ways that you can make that location independent, because then you instantly increase the value and you also open up the market, which will give you more cash flow and more profit while you own it.
Is it fair to divide the market for potential businesses into e-commerce and information-based businesses?
There's actually 7, and probably more if you want to go deeper. But I'd say your main ones are sort of content-based, which usually rely on advertising. Most people think of content-based businesses as passive opportunities. So, you'll see a site that's for sale, maybe that has AdSense ads running, and traffic comes in from Google, and the articles are already written. And a common mistake is for people to think, it's easy money. I'll buy the site, hang on to it. People click on adverts. I make money. I can do this while I sleep. Actually, it's never the case, because you have to put a lot of effort into 1, generating content, and 2, marketing that content once you've got that content out there. So I would say content is not the best opportunity for the majority of people, but it's probably the largest, closely followed by e-commerce. E-commerce, you have physical e-commerce where you're dealing with physical goods, but you also have dropship, as well as digital e-commerce where you might be selling electronic goods, which gives you naturally high margins. And then you've got other models such as affiliate, you've got lead gen, you've also got SaaS, which is online software, and service-based businesses as well.
And do you, as your compensation, do you take a percentage of the transaction, or am I paying you a fee to help engage you to help me find something?
So we charge a flat fee, but just to clarify, we don't necessarily help buyers find something, as in we don't offer hand-holding throughout that stage. What we do is we bring all the listings together through Centurica Market Watch, which is at centurica.com/Market Watch. So buyers can go on there and they can see all the opportunities that have been brought together. All the information for those opportunities are in one place. Once they find something that fits their personal criteria, that's the point which they'll usually engage us. And then we'll do the sort of research on that particular opportunity, on that business, and we'll look at all the things that matter in order to give a report to that buyer to tell them whether or not this is a good investment to make, or at least a safe investment to make.
I understand there's no guarantees, but is there any liability on your part? So you say, Charlie, we've done our due diligence and we really feel this is really strong. And then come 6 months down the road, we find out that there's some fraud or something like that. Is there any liability on your or your company's part there?
I mean, on our part, there's sort of we don't warranty information from the seller in that respect, but every bit of information that we put in to some extent is objective. So we're looking at factors that would typically, for example, cause traffic to decline. And these are relatively black and white things. So we'll tell you what the percentage of traffic is from various sources and what the typical risk of those sources drying up or declining are. So we appreciate that nothing is guaranteed. We can't predict the future, but we do a very good job of it through experience and through looking at the right factors to give people a clear picture as to what is likely to happen in the future with this business.
Do you ever co-invest with folks who are buying a business?
We don't. I mean, as founders, we all have our own investments. This is something we've been doing for years, and we really enjoy this. We have a passion for the industry. We tend not to co-invest purely because there are more opportunities than there are time, which is something I'm sure you're aware of. And when you're working online, it's very difficult to spend a lot of time involved in lots of different opportunities and not just focusing on the one that matters. And for us, focusing on Centurica and focusing on what we do in Centurica is a pretty important thing to us.
Do you do any matchmaking, I'm going to call it? So I come to you and I say, Justin, I'm fairly knowledgeable about the online space. I know about this stuff. I want to buy a business. I don't have a lot of capital. Maybe I have $20,000, but I want to buy a $100,000 business or more. Can you put me in touch with somebody who you may know who has said to you, hey, Justin, I want to be more of a passive investor, but I want to hook up and partner with somebody who is going to be active and who knows what they're doing. And on the flip side, if I was a guy who had some money and wanted to be a passive investor, could you introduce me to someone who maybe had not enough money to purchase a good business, but had much more knowledge than me?
Absolutely. I mean, this is something that I don't do as a service to Centurica, but I do as Justin Gilchrist. I speak a lot and I'm really active in the community. And I always invite people to find me an email if you've got a question, there's something you need. So often this is something I'll do just within the course of a day because I happen to have had that conversation with maybe the perfect person a few days earlier. And it just makes sense to do that. It makes sense to help people out.
So you gave us a couple of good pieces of advice. So I kind of want to wrap up with this. I'm your friend, I'm your neighbor, I'm your pal, and I understand what you do, and I am, ready to go. I'm ready to buy something. Again, you mentioned a lot of great points. I'm sure I can get some more resources from you, but just as a friend at a very high level, a couple of high level tips or suggestions or pieces of advice you would give me as a new online business purchaser.
Absolutely. The first one, which sounds really obvious, but I think it's one that needs saying, is just understand why that business creates value, why that business makes money. A lot of people who are new to this will look at a web business and they will see the profit and they'll see the figures in black and white, but not fully understand where the value is or where the value is being created. and just assume that it's because they don't understand, web as a technology, or they don't understand the semantics behind this business. But actually, I think every good web business will make sense to you just as an individual. You'll be able to look at that and you'll know this is what the business does. This is why it creates value for the clients or for the users. And, this is why it will continue to earn an income. I'd also say look a lot at longevity. Just ask yourself, how long do you think this opportunity is likely to be around for? And what are the threats to the income that this opportunity generates? So if you see something that is maybe based on a fad or based on something seasonal, a lot of people are quite optimistic when they really want a business, and they'll think to themselves, well, we can extend it and we can do other things and we can build on that. If you're having to build on that, then you may as well just start from scratch. You want something, if you're paying for it, you want something that is going to give you value and is going to keep giving you value over the next few years. Those are the two probably best bits of higher level advice I'd give. Just understand the business, understand the opportunity, and look for that longevity. Look for something that's going to last you, where you don't have to tweak it or modify it a lot to begin with. So effectively stay away from developing assets unless you absolutely know what you're doing. Look for things that are already developed, that will already deliver value, where you only have to improve upon that.
Great information and insights, Justin. What's the best way for our listeners to reach out and connect with you if they're interested and want more information?
Sure. So best two URLs, if you go to Centurica.com, if you've already found something that you want to buy and you're looking for someone just to give you an expert view and sort of analyze that potential purchase for you. Or if you're still getting into this and you just want a bit more information, I'd advise people to go to exitplan.co.
Exitplan.co.
Which is the a blog and the landing page for the book. Charlie, I actually forgot my own URL. You can tell it's getting the UK, right? My mind went completely blank for a second.
Well, you forgot the M at the end of .co too, right?
No, it's definitely .co. It's exitplan.co, not .com.
Well, all the fantastic resources mentioned in today's episode will be available on the show notes page at theboomerbusinessowner.com. Justin, thanks so much on behalf of all of our listeners. We really, really appreciate your help.
No problem at all. And thank you for having me on, Charlie.
Boomers, the time is now to take action and finally build your dream online business. And the great news is that Charlie is here to help. Visit theboomerbusinessowner.com and sign up for your free 15-minute consultation with Charlie to help you discover your first steps to starting your online business. Only those who take action are rewarded, so visit theboomerbusinessowner.com and we'll see you tomorrow.